The marble floor was cold beneath my knees, even through the thick fabric of my uniform. I'd been scrubbing the same spot for 20 minutes now, watching the wine stain slowly fade from cream to pale pink, my fingers pruned and aching from the chemical bite of the cleaner. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, all gleaming surfaces and tasteful art that cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Everything here whispered wealth in a language I'd never learned to speak. My back protested as I shifted position, the dull ache settling deeper into my spine. 3 double shifts this week, 4 next week if I could manage it. The numbers tumbled through my exhausted mind like stones: rent, utilities, mama's medication, the past due notice from the hospital. Each figure a small knife, cutting a little deeper. You missed a spot. I flinched at the sharp voice, my head snapping up to find Mrs. Castellanos looming over me, her severe face pinched with perpetual disapproval. The head housekeeper of the Valencia Hotel, the most exclusive establishment in the city, where rooms started at $5,000 a night, and the clientele could buy and sell people like me without checking their bank statements. I'm sorry, You'll do it properly the first time, or you'll find yourself back on the street. Her accent was thick, her words clipped. Mr. Constantine arrives in 1 hour. Everything must be perfect. Perfect. Do you understand? My throat tightened. Yes, ma'am. She swept away, her heels clicking in angry staccato against the marble, leaving me alone with my burning hands and the spreading dampness behind my eyes that I absolutely could not allow to fall. Not here. Not where someone might see. I'd heard whispers about Mr. Constantine in the 3 months I'd worked here. Everyone whispered about him, the staff falling silent when his name was mentioned, crossing themselves when they thought no one was looking. He occupied the entire penthouse floor, though he rarely stayed more than a few days at a time. Something about business, something about power, something about the kind of danger that made even hardened security guards nervous. The kind of man who existed in a different stratosphere entirely. I returned to scrubbing, my vision blurring slightly. The exhaustion was bone deep now, settling into my marrow. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 4 hours, couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten something that wasn't whatever the kitchen staff was throwing away at the end of their shifts. My uniform, 2 sizes too big, borrowed from a girl who'd quit last month, hung on my frame like a tent, invisible. That's what I needed to be. Invisible and efficient and completely forgettable. The stain finally surrendered, fading to nothing under my determined assault. I sat back on my heels, pressing one raw hand against the small of my back, allowing myself exactly 3 seconds of rest before the elevator chimed. My heart lurched. Too early? He wasn't supposed to arrive for another hour. I scrambled to gather my supplies, my hands clumsy with panic. And that's when it happened. My elbow caught the bucket, sending it tipping, the dirty water cascading across the pristine floor in a spreading pool of disaster. No, no, no. The word escaped as a desperate whisper as I lunged forward, trying uselessly to contain the flood with my bare hands. The water was everywhere now, creeping toward the antique runner, toward the doorway of Suite 3000, toward certain termination of my employment. The elevator doors opened. I didn't look up. Couldn't look up. My entire focus narrowed to the impossible task of cleaning up this catastrophe before Mrs. Castellanos returned, before whoever had just arrived witnessed my spectacular failure. My hands moved frantically, squeezing water back into the bucket with my cleaning rags, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Footsteps approached. Not the sharp click of heels, but something heavier, more deliberate. Expensive shoes. I could tell by the sound alone. Multiple sets of footsteps, actually, moving in formation. They stopped. I could feel eyes on me, assessing, judging. Heat crawled up my neck, flooding my face. This was it. This was how I'd lose the job I desperately needed. The job that barely kept us afloat, but was all that stood between us and complete destitution. I'm so sorry, I managed, the words tumbling out in a rush. I'll have this cleaned immediately. Look at me. The voice cut through my panic like a blade through silk, low, commanding, with an accent that turned the simple words into something almost dangerous. Not a request. Never a request from someone who sounded like that. I couldn't disobey. My body moved before my mind could catch up, my head tilting back, my eyes traveling up past perfectly tailored shoes, past charcoal slacks with a knife-edge crease, past a black shirt that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe until, oh. The breath left my lungs in a silent rush. He was young. That was my first coherent thought. Younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, perhaps a year or two more. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic lines. But it was his eyes that held me frozen, pale, almost silver in the hallway's soft lighting, and completely, utterly cold. This was a man who'd looked at death and found it boring. 2 men flanked him, both large and alert, their jackets cut to conceal but not quite hide the weapons underneath. Security. His security. Because men like him move through the world wrapped in layers of protection, insulated from the chaos that defined lives like mine. "What's your name?" He didn't blink, didn't smile. His gaze moved over me with the same clinical assessment someone might use when examining a particularly interesting insect. "Sarah." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Sarah Mitchell." "Hun, how long have you worked here, Sarah Mitchell?" Something about the way he said my full name made my skin prickle with awareness. 3 months. And in 3 months, has anyone taught you the proper way to clean a floor? His tone was mild, almost conversational, but I caught the steel underneath. The implicit threat. Tears burned behind my eyes. I would not cry. I would not cry in front of this man, in front of his cold appraisal and his casual cruelty. "Yes, sir." "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." "No," he agreed softly. "It won't." The finality in those words hit me like a physical blow. Of course. He was going to have me fired. Men like him probably ruined lives before breakfast without a second thought. I was nothing to him, less than nothing. A mistake to be erased, a problem to be eliminated. The tears came anyway, hot and humiliating, spilling down my cheeks before I could stop them. I ducked my head, my hands still clutching the soaked rag, my shoulders trembling with the effort of keeping the sobs silent. I needed this job. Mama needed her medication. The hospital needed their payment. We needed... Stop. I couldn't. The tears kept coming. 3 months of exhaustion and fear and grinding poverty finally breaking through the careful wall I'd built around myself. I pressed my free hand against my mouth, trying to muffle the sounds, trying to disappear into the floor itself. A shadow fell over me. He'd moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne now. Something dark and expensive with notes of cedar and smoke, close enough that I could see the perfect shine of his shoes, now dangerously near the spreading water. Look at me. Quieter this time, but no less commanding. I forced my head up, my vision swimming with tears, and found him crouched before me, not kneeling. Men like him didn't kneel, but lowered to my level, those pale eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Why are you crying?" The question was clinical, curious, as if my tears were a puzzle he needed to solve. My voice broke. "I can't lose this job. Please. I'll work double shifts. Why can't you lose this job?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "There are other jobs." A hysterical laugh bubbled up. "Other jobs." As if it were that simple. "My mother is sick. She needs medication. I have bills. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, desperation overriding dignity. "I don't have anyone else. It's just us. Please, I'll do anything. Anything?" The word hung in the air between us, sharp and loaded with meaning. I froze, suddenly aware of how that must have sounded, of how vulnerable I'd made myself, of how this powerful, dangerous man was looking at me now, not with pity, but with something else entirely, something calculating. I started to backtrack, but he held up one hand, silencing me. "How much do you make here?" he asked instead. The question threw me. $15 an hour, usually 40 hours a week, sometimes more. Something flickered across his face. Too quick to read, too subtle to name. He stood in one fluid motion, pulling his phone from his pocket. "Victor." One of the security guards stepped forward immediately. Yes, sir. Find out who this girl's supervisor is. Tell them she's been reassigned. His eyes never left my face, effective immediately. My heart stopped. Reassigned? You'll work for me now. He said it as casually as someone might comment on the weather, directly. Your salary will be triple what you're currently making. You'll have health insurance that will cover your mother's medication. You'll work reasonable hours. I stared at him, convinced I'd misheard. Convinced this was some cruel joke. Some game rich men played with desperate girls in hallways. I don't understand. It's quite simple. He slipped his phone back into his pocket, his gaze still fixed on mine with that unnerving intensity. I need someone I can trust. Someone who has something to lose. Someone who knows what desperation tastes like and will do everything in their power to avoid tasting it again. But you don't know me. The words escaped before I could stop them. I could be anyone. You could be a threat. He finished my sentence, his lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. But you're not. I can always tell. The elevator chimed again, his head turned slightly, and I saw his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Go to the penthouse. Suite 5000. Wait for me there. Victor will take you up. I struggled to form a coherent thought. I haven't said yes. Those pale eyes returned to mine, and this time there was something almost amused in their depths. Yes, you have. You said it the moment you told me you'd do anything. He straightened his cuffs, a gesture that seemed habitual. The only question now is whether you meant it. He walked past me, his shoes somehow avoiding the water I'd spilled, his security following like shadows. I watched him go, my mind spinning, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was... Miss Mitchell? Victor, the security guard, extended one gloved hand toward me. If you'll come with me. I looked down at my soaked uniform, my raw hands, the bucket still lying on its side in a puddle of dirty water. Looked at the life I'd been living, stretched thin as paper, always one disaster away from complete collapse. Looked at the elevator where that dangerous, beautiful man had disappeared, offering me a lifeline that felt more like a noose. My hand was shaking when I placed it in Victor's. Okay, I whispered. Okay. The elevator doors closed behind us, and I watched the numbers climb. Past the floors where people like me cleaned and served, past the luxury suites, past everything familiar, toward the penthouse, where a stranger with silver eyes had just purchased my future for the price of my desperation. I should have been terrified. The problem was, I was. The elevator rose in silence, each floor marked by a soft chime that seemed to echo in my chest. Victor stood at parade rest, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression revealing nothing. I pressed myself against the far corner, acutely aware of how I must look, uniform soaked and wrinkled, hair escaping its bun in damp tendrils, the chemical smell of cleaning solution clinging to my skin. What had I just agreed to? The numbers climbed higher than I'd ever been allowed to go. The penthouse level wasn't accessible with a standard key card. I'd learned that my first week. Only Mr. Constantine and his personal staff could reach it, and now, apparently, me. The doors opened onto a private foyer that stole what little breath I had left. Polished black marble reflected recessed lighting, creating the illusion of walking on water. A massive abstract painting dominated one wall, all slashing reds and golds that seemed to move in my peripheral vision. The air itself felt different here, filtered and temperature-controlled to perfection, carrying the faint scent of leather and expensive tobacco. This way, Miss Mitchell. Victor's voice was carefully neutral as he gestured toward an enormous set of double doors. My legs moved mechanically, carrying me forward, even as my mind screamed warnings. This was the part in the story where the foolish girl walked into the monster's lair. This was where everything went horribly, irreversibly wrong. The doors opened onto a space that defied description. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around three sides, offering a view of the city that made my stomach drop. We were so high up that the buildings below looked like toys, the traffic like sluggish rivers of light. The penthouse itself was decorated in shades of black and steel gray, all clean lines and minimalist furniture that probably cost more per piece than I'd make in a year, even at my new salary, if this was real. if any of this was real. Mr. Constantine will be up shortly. Victor moved to position himself by the door, clearly intending to wait with me. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, tried again. What exactly am I supposed to do? He said I'd be working for him, but he'll explain. Victor's expression softened slightly, though his posture remained rigid. I'd suggest you make yourself presentable. There's a bathroom through that door. He nodded toward a hallway. Second door on the right. Make myself presentable. Right. As if soap and water could transform me into someone who belonged in a place like this. But I went anyway, my feet silent on carpet so plush it felt like walking on clouds. The bathroom was larger than my entire apartment, all white marble and gold fixtures, with towels so soft they seemed to melt under my touch. I stared at my reflection in the massive mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed girl looking back at me. When had I gotten so thin? The uniform hung on me like a shroud, emphasizing the sharp angles of my collarbones, the shadows under my eyes. My skin had that grayish cast that came from too little sleep and too much stress. I looked exactly like what I was, someone drowning slowly, too proud to scream for help until it was almost too late. I washed my hands carefully, watching the water turn gray with dirt and cleaning solution. Splashed cold water on my face, removing the tear tracks, tried to tame my hair back into something resembling order. It was futile. I'd never look like I belonged here, but at least I looked slightly less like something the cat dragged in. When I emerged, Victor was speaking quietly into his phone. He ended the call as I approached. Mr. Constantine is delayed. He asks that you wait. How long? Unknown. Victor's expression was carefully blank. Would you like something to drink? Water? Coffee? Water would be... My stomach growled, loud and mortifying in the quiet space. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, I realized. A protein bar someone had left in the staff room, gone stale but still edible. Victor's eyes flickered with something that might have been sympathy. I'll have food brought up. No, that's not... It wasn't a question, Miss Mitchell. He was already speaking into his phone again, rapid-fire Russian that I couldn't understand but that somehow sounded both respectful and commanding. 10 minutes later, I found myself seated at the kitchen island, black granite, gleaming appliances that looked like they'd never been used, facing a spread of food that made my eyes sting with fresh tears. Sandwiches cut into precise triangles, a bowl of fruit that glistened like jewels, cookies that smelled like heaven, a pitcher of ice water beaded with condensation. Eat, Victor said simply, then returned to his post by the door. I wanted to resist, wanted to maintain some shred of dignity, some illusion that I wasn't completely desperate. But my body betrayed me, my hand reaching for a sandwich before my mind could overrule it. The first bite was revelation: real turkey, crisp lettuce, some kind of aioli that burst across my tongue with flavor I'd almost forgotten existed. I ate slowly, trying to maintain some semblance of manners even though every instinct screamed at me to shove the food in my mouth as fast as possible. Ate until my stomach protested, unaccustomed to being full. Drank water until the persistent headache that had been my companion for weeks finally began to fade. Thank you, I said quietly. And Victor nodded once. The sun was setting beyond the windows, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. I watched the city transform, lights beginning to glitter like captured stars, and tried to process what had happened. A few hours ago, I'd been invisible, just another body in a uniform, scrubbing floors and swallowing humiliation with every breath. Now I was in a penthouse that probably cost more per night than I made in 6 months, eating food I couldn't have afforded in my wildest dreams, waiting for a dangerous man who'd offered me salvation with strings I couldn't yet see. There were always strings, always a price. The question was whether I could afford to pay it. The elevator chimed. Victor straightened imperceptibly, his hand moving toward his jacket in a gesture that was pure instinct. The doors opened, and he was there. Mr. Constantine, flanked by 2 different security guards, his expression carved from ice. But there was something else now, something I hadn't noticed in the hallway. Blood. Not much. Just a few drops on his shirt cuff, dark against the black fabric. His knuckles were slightly red, the skin abraded. He'd hurt someone, recently. Out, he said simply, and his security guards retreated to the elevator without question. Victor hesitated for a fraction of a second. I saw the conflict in his eyes, but then he too withdrew, leaving me alone with this man who wore violence like cologne. The silence stretched, broken only by the soft hum of climate control and my racing heartbeat. He moved to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of something amber, drank it in one smooth motion, poured another. Only then did he turn to face me fully. You ate. Not a question. An observation. Victor said, "Good." He cut me off, moving closer. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" I didn't want to answer, didn't want to give him any more weapons to use against me, but his eyes demanded truth, and I found myself helpless against that demand. 2 days ago. The kitchen staff sometimes 2 days. He repeated the words like they tasted foul. And your mother's medication. I had to choose between the full dose and food. The admission burned. I've been splitting her pills, stretching them. Something dangerous flickered across his face. That could kill her. So could starvation. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, edged with the desperation I'd been holding back. I'm doing the best I can. Your best is killing you both. He set his glass down with controlled precision. That ends now. I don't understand what you want from me. My hands clenched in my lap. You don't know me. Why would you? I told you. I need someone I can trust. That doesn't make sense. Trust takes time. Trust takes... I have neither the time nor the patience for conventional relationship building, Sarah. My name in his mouth sounded like a caress and a threat simultaneously. What I have is excellent instinct and the resources to act on it. You need help. I need someone in a very specific position. We can help each other. What position? He studied me for a long moment, those pale eyes cataloging every detail. My world is complicated, dangerous. People want things from me constantly. Money, power, influence, blood. It becomes difficult to know who's genuine and who's simply playing a long game. He moved to the windows, his back to me, silhouetted against the dying light. But you have no idea who I am, do you? You're Mr. Constantine. I said it carefully. You stay here sometimes. People are afraid of you. They should be. He turned back, and something in his expression made my breath catch. My full name is Alexei Konstantin Volkov. Does that mean anything to you? I shook my head slowly. Good. A ghost of something that might have been a smile touched his lips. That's refreshingly honest. Most people in this city know my name, know what it represents. What does it represent? Power. Control. He approached until he was standing directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. I run an organization that operates in the spaces between legal and illegal. I have business interests that span continents. I have enemies who would kill me without hesitation, and allies who would betray me for the right price. His hand moved, and I flinched involuntarily, but he only brushed a loose strand of hair from my face, his touch surprisingly gentle. I need someone in my personal space who wants nothing from me except to survive. Someone whose loyalty can be bought with something as simple as a living wage and health care. Someone who hasn't been corrupted by this world yet. You want a maid. I tried to keep the disappointment from my voice. You want someone to clean your penthouse and... No. The word was firm. I want someone who will be here, who will see things, hear things, but who has no allegiance to any of my enemies. Someone I can talk to, who isn't trying to manipulate me or kill me or steal from me. His thumb traced my cheekbone and I shivered despite myself. I want someone real in a world of carefully constructed lies. I'm not... I struggled to find words. I'm nobody. I'm just... You're someone who's been invisible for so long you've forgotten you exist. His voice dropped lower. I'm offering you visibility, Sarah. A salary of $45 an hour. Full health insurance that will cover your mother completely. An apartment in this building, smaller than this, but yours. Safety, security. All you have to do is be here when I need you to be here. Listen when I need to talk. Exist in my space without agenda. It sounded too good, too easy. And if I say no, then Victor will escort you back to your life, and you'll never see me again. He withdrew his hand, creating distance. You'll continue splitting pills and skipping meals and working yourself to death. And in 6 months, maybe a year, you'll break. You'll lose your mother, your apartment, yourself. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. That's not fair. My voice trembled with anger now, with the fury of having my choices stripped away. You're manipulating me. Yes. He didn't deny it. I'm offering you a way out of hell, and you're calling it manipulation. Perhaps you're right. But the door is still open, Sarah. The question is whether you're brave enough, or desperate enough, to walk through it. I stood, my legs unsteady, and moved to the windows. The city sprawled below, indifferent to my crisis. Millions of people down there, all fighting their own battles, all trying to survive. How many of them would kill for this opportunity? How many would call me a fool for hesitating? What happens when you get bored? I asked, my breath fogging the glass. When the novelty wears off and you don't need your real person anymore? Then you'll have saved enough money to start over properly. You'll have experience, references, opportunities you never would have had otherwise. His reflection appeared in the window beside mine. I'm not offering you forever, Sarah. I'm offering you a chance. I closed my eyes, thinking of Mama in her hospital bed, her body ravaged by illness we couldn't afford to treat. Thinking of our apartment with its peeling paint and broken heater. Thinking of the future I'd resigned myself to. More floors to scrub, more humiliation to swallow, more of myself slowly eroding until there was nothing left. Okay, I whispered. Okay. When I opened my eyes, his reflection was smiling. A real smile this time, sharp and satisfied. Good. Victor will take you home tonight. Pack what you need. Tomorrow you move in. Tomorrow? The word came out strangled, but I have to give notice. I'll handle it. He was already moving toward his phone. Give me your mother's information, her doctor, her hospital, her medication list. I'll have everything arranged by morning. This was happening too fast. Everything was spinning out of control, and I was falling, and there was nothing to grab onto except him. This dangerous stranger who'd seen me crying on a floor and decided to rebuild my world. I gave him the information, my voice mechanical, and watched him make calls in that rapid Russian, his tone commanding and absolute. Watched him dismantle my life and reconstruct it with the same casual efficiency someone might use to rearrange furniture. When he finished, he looked at me with those pale, assessing eyes. Sleep here tonight. The guest room is through that hall, second door. Victor will bring your things tomorrow. I need to see my mother. I need to tell her. I'll take you myself. The offer surprised me. After you've rested, you look like you're about to collapse. I wanted to argue. Wanted to maintain some control over this situation, but exhaustion was crashing over me in waves now, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving only the bone-deep weariness I'd been carrying for months. Why are you being kind? The question slipped out. If you're as dangerous as everyone says, why... Kindness and danger aren't mutually exclusive, Sarah. He moved closer, crowding my space but not quite touching. I can be both. I am both. The question is which version of me you'll see. His hand came up, cupping my jaw, tilting my face toward his. Betray me, and you'll learn exactly how dangerous I can be. Serve me well, and you'll want for nothing. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I felt that touch everywhere. Now, go to bed before you fall down. We have a lot to do tomorrow. He released me, and I fled. There was no other word for it. Down the hallway to the guest room. Only when the door was closed behind me did I allow myself to shake, to process what had just happened. I'd sold myself. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but I'd put myself completely in the power of a man I didn't know. A man who hurt people and wore blood like an accessory. A man whose touch made my skin burn, and whose eyes promised both salvation and damnation. The guest room was beautiful, all soft grays and whites, with a bed that looked like a cloud. I collapsed onto it fully clothed, too exhausted to even remove my shoes. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, I'd step fully into this new life, this dangerous bargain. Tonight, for the first time in months, I fell asleep without crying. Morning came wrapped in confusion. For several long seconds, I couldn't remember where I was. The bed too soft, the sheets too smooth, the silence too complete. Then it crashed back. The hallway, the silver-eyed man, the impossible offer that hadn't been a dream. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows I didn't remember leaving uncovered, painting everything gold. I sat up slowly, my body protesting. Every muscle ached from months of physical labor, but underneath that familiar pain was something new. The absence of the crushing anxiety that usually woke me gasping at dawn. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Miss Mitchell?" Victor's voice, respectful but firm. "Mr. Volkov asks that you join him for breakfast." Mr. Volkov, not Mr. Constantine. His real name, the one that carried weight, I still didn't fully understand. "Give me 5 minutes," I called back, my voice rough with sleep. The bathroom attached to the guest room offered luxuries I'd only seen in magazines. A rainfall shower, heated floors, products that smelled like they cost more than my weekly grocery budget used to be. I washed quickly, reluctantly putting back on yesterday's uniform since I had nothing else. My reflection showed someone who'd slept 8 uninterrupted hours for the first time in recent memory. The shadows under my eyes hadn't disappeared, but they'd faded slightly. Victor was waiting in the hallway, his expression neutral. This way. The penthouse looked different in daylight. Less intimidating, though no less expensive. He was seated at the dining table, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, reading something on his tablet. The morning light caught in his dark hair, softening the harsh angles of his face just enough to remind me how young he actually was. How beautiful. The thought came unbidden, unwelcome. Beauty was dangerous in men like him. A lure, a distraction from the violence lurking underneath. "Sit." He gestured to the place across from him without looking up. I obeyed, my hands clasping in my lap. The table was set for 2, with more food than I could eat in a week. Pastries, fruit, eggs, toast, coffee that smelled like heaven. "Eat," he said, still focused on his tablet. "We have appointments today." "Appointments?" "Your mother's been transferred to Mercy General. Better facility, better doctors. They'll start her on the correct medication regimen this afternoon." He finally looked up, those pale eyes assessing. "You'll meet with HR at 2 to finalize your employment contract. At 4, you'll see the apartment that's been prepared for you. At 6, we have dinner with business associates." My stomach tightened. "We?" "You'll accompany me." He said it like it was obvious, part of your duties. "I don't understand. You said you needed someone to be here, to listen, but I need someone whose presence doesn't come with complications." He set down his tablet, giving me his full attention. "In my world, everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. If I bring a woman to dinner, people make assumptions, assume she's my mistress, or a potential wife, or a spy for a rival. It creates conversations I don't have time for." His lips curved slightly. "But if I bring my personal assistant, someone clearly in my employ, clearly not from my world, it simplifies things. So I'm, what, a prop? Your protection." The words were soft but serious. "For both of us. You protect me from unwanted speculation. I protect you from anyone who might seek to harm me through you. Who would want to harm you through me? I'm nobody. You became somebody the moment you entered my elevator yesterday." His gaze held mine, intense and unwavering. "The moment I showed you any interest at all, you became a target. People will watch you now, try to use you, try to get information from you, which is why you'll never leave this building without security, why Victor or someone like him will always be nearby, why you need to understand exactly what you've stepped into." The pastry I'd been reaching for suddenly looked unappetizing. "You're saying I'm in danger. I'm saying you're protected." He leaned back, studying me. "There's a difference. Danger implies vulnerability. You're not vulnerable anymore, Sarah. You're under my protection, which means anyone who touches you answers to me." Something dark flickered across his face. "And I'm not known for my mercy." The words should have frightened me. Maybe they did. But there was something else too, something that felt uncomfortably like relief. For the first time in years, someone powerful was standing between me and the world's casual cruelty. "What do I need to know?" I asked quietly. "For tonight. For this dinner." Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't accept drinks from anyone except the server. Stay within eyesight of Victor at all times. He paused. And if anyone asks you questions about me, about my business, my schedule, my associates, you know nothing. You're new. You're grateful for the job. You're not privy to my affairs. Can you do that? Yes. The word came easier than I'd expected. Good. He stood, buttoning his jacket in one smooth motion. Finish eating. Victor will take you to see your mother in an hour. I have business to attend to, but I'll see you at the apartment viewing. He was halfway to the elevator when I found my voice. Why me? He paused, his back to me. I told you. No, I stood, my hands gripping the edge of the table. You could have hired anyone, someone qualified, someone from your world who understands the rules. Why a maid you found crying in a hallway? The silence stretched so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he turned, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Because everyone in my world is playing a game, Sarah. Everyone has an agenda, a plan, a price at which they'll betray me. But you? He moved closer, each step deliberate. You weren't playing anything. You were just drowning, trying to survive. And when I offered you a lifeline, you didn't try to negotiate for more. You didn't see an opportunity to exploit. You just looked at me like I was insane for offering you basic human dignity. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne again. Cedar and smoke and something darker. That kind of genuine desperation. That kind of raw honesty. It's rarer than you'd think in my world. Valuable, even. So, I'm valuable because I'm pathetic? The bitterness in my voice surprised me. You're valuable because you're real. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek in a gesture that was becoming familiar. Everyone else around me is a performance. But you? You don't know how to be anything except exactly what you are. That's useful to me. And when I learn to perform too, when I figure out the game, his smile was sharp enough to cut. Then I'll find another lost girl in a hallway. His thumb traced my jaw, but something tells me that won't happen. You're too stubborn to become someone you're not, even when it would benefit you. He left before I could respond, the elevator doors closing on his enigmatic expression. I stood there, my cheek still warm from his touch, trying to understand what had just happened. Victor cleared his throat softly from his position by the door. If you're ready, Miss Mitchell, we should go see your mother. Mercy General was everything the county hospital wasn't. Clean, quiet, with staff that smiled and made eye contact. Victor led me through corridors that smelled like lavender instead of antiseptic, past rooms with actual windows that let in natural light. Mama's new room was private, spacious, with a view of the garden courtyard. She was awake when I entered, propped up on pillows, looking more alert than I'd seen her in months. The color had returned to her cheeks. Her breathing came easier. Sarah? Her voice was stronger, clearer. Baby, what's going on? They moved me this morning, said everything's been taken care of, but nobody will explain. I crossed to her bedside, taking her hand carefully. The IV line was new, delivering medication we'd been rationing for weeks. It's okay, Mama. Everything's okay now. Nothing's okay. We can't afford this place. They said my treatment's already been paid for, all of it, but that's impossible. I got a new job. The lie came easily, or maybe it wasn't entirely a lie. A better one. With health insurance. They're covering everything. Her eyes, still sharp despite the illness, searched my face. What kind of job comes with insurance this good right away? Sarah Michelle Mitchell, what have you done? Nothing bad. I squeezed her hand gently. I promise, Mama. I'm working as a personal assistant now, for someone wealthy. It's legitimate. It's safe. The last word tasted like ash. Safe. Nothing about Alexei Volkov was safe. But compared to watching my mother die by inches because we couldn't afford her medication, compared to the slow starvation of body and soul I'd been enduring, maybe danger was relative. You look different, Mama said softly, studying me. Rested. When's the last time you slept a full night? Last night. I managed a smile. In a real bed, with real pillows. It was amazing. Tell me about this job. Who is this person you're working for? I gave her the sanitized version. Wealthy businessman, Needed someone trustworthy, generous benefits. I left out the blood on his cuffs, the cold calculation in his eyes, the way his touch made my skin burn. Left out the part where I'd essentially sold myself into the service of a man everyone whispered about with fear in their voices. Victor waited in the doorway, his presence a constant reminder of my new reality. Other patients had visitors who came and went freely. I had an armed guard. We stayed for an hour. Mama's doctor came by, young, competent, actually taking time to explain her treatment plan instead of rushing through it. He spoke to me like I mattered, like my questions deserved thoughtful answers. The medication would take weeks to show full effect, he explained. But they were optimistic about her prognosis. Optimistic. When was the last time anyone had used that word about Mama's condition? I'll come back tomorrow, I promised, as a nurse arrived with afternoon medications. Same time. You better. Mama caught my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. And Sarah? Be careful with this new job. If something feels wrong, I will, Mama. I promise. Another lie. Or maybe a wish. Maybe if I said it enough times, it would become true. The apartment Victor showed me that afternoon was on the 20th floor. High enough for views, low enough that I didn't feel like I was floating in space. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with appliances that gleamed unused, a living area with furniture that looked comfortable and modern. It was the nicest place I'd ever lived. It was also clearly chosen for its proximity to the penthouse, only 5 floors down, easy to summon at a moment's notice. Mr. Volkov had it furnished yesterday, Victor explained. If there's anything you need, make a list. He wants you comfortable. It's perfect. I meant it. Compared to the shoebox apartment with its broken heater and perpetual smell of mildew, this was a palace. When can I move in? Your belongings are already here. Victor gestured to the bedroom. I collected them this morning while you slept. I pushed open the bedroom door and froze. My clothes, the few items I owned, hung in a closet that could have held 10 times as much. But they weren't alone. Designer labels I recognized from magazines filled the remaining space, along with shoes, bags, accessories, everything in my size. What is this? I turned to Victor, my voice sharp with confusion. Mr. Volkov's instructions. Victor's expression remained neutral. You'll be accompanying him to various functions. You need appropriate attire. I didn't agree to be his dress-up doll. You agreed to be his personal assistant. Victor's tone was patient but firm. This is part of that role. The clothes are tools, nothing more. You wouldn't ask a carpenter to work without a hammer. The logic was sound, but something about it made my skin crawl. These weren't my clothes. This wasn't my life. I was playing dress-up in someone else's existence, and the longer I did it, the harder it would be to remember who I'd been before. If I even wanted to remember. The dinner tonight, I said, changing the subject. What should I wear? Victor moved to the closet, selecting a dress in deep emerald that looked simultaneously elegant and understated. This, with these shoes. Hair down, minimal jewelry. Mr. Volkov prefers simplicity. How do you know what he prefers? I've worked for him for 6 years. Victor laid the outfit on the bed carefully. I know most of his preferences by now. 6 years. Long enough to see things, to know secrets. I studied Victor's scarred face, his careful posture. Can I ask you something? You can ask. I may not answer. Is he as dangerous as people say? Victor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. More dangerous than you can imagine, Miss Mitchell. But not to you. He paused. Not unless you give him reason. He's protective of what he considers his, possessive even. As long as you remain loyal, you have nothing to fear. And if I'm not loyal, then I would pray for you. Victor moved toward the door. Be ready by 5:30. We leave at 6. After he left, I stood in the bedroom surrounded by expensive things that weren't mine, wearing a future I hadn't chosen, and wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But when I thought about Mama's face, rested, hopeful, free from the constant shadow of pain, I knew the answer. I'd made the only choice available to me. Now, I had to live with the consequences. I picked up the emerald dress, feeling the weight of silk that cost more than I used to make in a month, and began preparing for my first evening in Alexei Volkov's world. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in movies. All soft lighting and hushed conversations, where the prices weren't listed on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford to be there. Victor had driven us in a black SUV with windows so tinted, the world outside became shadows and suggestions. Alexei sat beside me in the back seat, his presence filling the space even though he barely moved. He'd appeared at my apartment door at exactly 6, his eyes traveling over me in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. The emerald dress fit perfectly. Of course it did, hugging curves I'd almost forgotten I had beneath baggy uniforms. The heels made me taller but unsteady, like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. "You'll do," he'd said finally, though something in his gaze suggested approval beyond those 2 words. Now we were here, and I was acutely aware of how out of place I felt. The other diners wore their wealth like second skin. Casual, comfortable, entitled to occupy space in rooms like this. I felt like an imposter, waiting for someone to point and expose me. "Stay close," Alexei murmured as we entered. His hand settled on the small of my back, warm through the thin silk. Possessive. "These people are sharks. They'll smell blood in the water if you show weakness." "Comforting," I muttered, and caught the ghost of a smile on his lips. The maitre d' greeted Alexei by name, his deference absolute. We were led to a private room in the back, more intimate, more isolated. 2 men already waited at the table, their conversation stopping the moment we entered. Both were older than Alexei, maybe mid-40s, wearing suits that screamed money and power. One had silver threading through his dark hair, his face weathered but handsome. The other was stockier, with cold eyes that assessed me like I was merchandise. "Alexei." The silver-haired man stood, extending his hand. "Good to see you." "Dmitri." Alexei's handshake was firm but brief. "This is Sarah Mitchell, my personal assistant." Those cold eyes locked onto me. Personal assistant. How modern. "Sarah, this is Dmitri Koslov and Victor Orlov." Alexei's hand never left my back. "Business associates." Associates. The word was deliberately vague, revealing nothing. I nodded politely, keeping my expression neutral the way Alexei had instructed. We sat, Alexei positioning me between himself and Victor. My Victor. I'd started thinking of him, though he wasn't mine at all. The bodyguard took up position against the wall, his eyes constantly scanning despite the private setting. "I didn't know you'd started hiring assistants," Dmitri said, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp. "Usually you prefer to handle things yourself. Things change." Alexei's voice was mild, but I caught the steel underneath. "I've been expanding operations. Having someone I trust to manage the details has become necessary." Trust. The stocky one, Victor Orlov, let the word hang. "That's an interesting word, considering we just met this young lady. Which is precisely why I trust her." Alexei's fingers brushed my arm, a gesture that looked casual but felt deliberate. "She has no connections to our world, no hidden agendas, no reason to betray me. Unlike some people." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. I kept my eyes on the table, my heart hammering, suddenly understanding that I was witnessing something dangerous. This wasn't just dinner. This was a chess game, and I was a piece Alexei had just moved into play. "Careful, Alexei." Dmitri's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Accusations without proof are dangerous things." I made no accusations. Alexei leaned back, perfectly relaxed. Merely stated facts. Trust is rare in our line of work. When you find it, you protect it. His hand found mine under the table, his fingers interlacing with my own. The gesture shocked me. Intimate, possessive, completely unexpected. I froze, unsure how to respond. "How long has she been working for you?" Orlov asked, his gaze never leaving me. "Does it matter?" Alexei's thumb traced circles on my palm, his touch sending unwanted heat up my arm. "She's mine now. That's all anyone needs to know. Mine." The word resonated through me, carrying implications I wasn't ready to examine. The waiter arrived, breaking the tension. Orders were placed in low voices. I let Alexei choose for me, having no idea what half the items on the menu even were. Wine was poured, though I barely touched mine. I needed my wits sharp, needed to understand what was happening around me. So, Sarah. Dmitri turned his attention to me fully, his smile predatory. How does a personal assistant end up working for someone like Alexei? I was fortunate. I kept my voice steady, remembering Alexei's instructions. He offered me an opportunity when I needed one. Fortunate. Dmitri repeated the word like it was amusing. Yes, I suppose you are. Not many people get close to Alexei. He's notoriously private. I'm just an assistant. I met his eyes briefly before looking away. Submissive, unthreatening. I manage his schedule, handle correspondence. Nothing more. Nothing more. Orlov's smile was cruel. Then you won't mind answering a few questions. For instance, where was Alexei last Tuesday evening? I don't discuss my employer's schedule. The response came automatically, and I felt Alexei's approval in the way his hand tightened on mine. Loyal already. Orlov's tone turned mocking. How much is he paying you for that loyalty? That's enough. Alexei's voice cut through the room like a blade. Sarah is here as my guest, not to be interrogated by you. If you have questions about my whereabouts, ask me directly instead of harassing someone who's done nothing to warrant your attention. The air crackled with tension. Victor shifted against the wall, his hand moving toward his jacket. The dynamic had changed, from tense dinner to potential violence in the space of seconds. Peace, Alexei. Dmitri raised his hands, placating. Victor was out of line. We're just curious. You've never brought anyone to these dinners before. It raises questions. Then let me answer them clearly. Alexei released my hand, but only to wrap his arm around my shoulders, pulling me closer against his side. Sarah is under my protection. Anyone who threatens her, questions her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me personally. Are we clear? Silence. Then Dmitri nodded slowly. Crystal clear. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation about business I didn't understand. Shipments and territories, percentages and partnerships. I stayed quiet, hyper-aware of Alexei's proximity, the weight of his arm around me, the way he touched me casually throughout the meal, brushing hair from my face, refilling my water glass, his fingers trailing across my shoulder. It was a performance, I realized. He was marking territory, showing these dangerous men that I belonged to him, that touching me would mean war. It should have angered me, being used like a prop in his power games. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Safe. Protected. Claimed in a way that made my pulse race and my skin flush. When dessert arrived, something chocolate and decadent that I couldn't taste past the adrenaline, Dmitri leaned forward. There's a matter we need to discuss, Alexei. About the shipment that went missing last month. Not here. Alexei's voice was flat, and not in front of her. She's your assistant. Surely she's privy to what I choose to share. Nothing more. Alexei stood, bringing me up with him. We're done for tonight. Victor will be in touch about rescheduling. He guided me toward the door, his hand firm on my waist. Behind us, I heard Orlov's muttered comment. Too low for full words, but the contempt clear in his tone. Alexei stopped, turned. The temperature plummeted. Say it again. His voice was soft, deadly. Say it loud enough for everyone to hear. I said nothing that matters. Orlov's smile was sharp with malice. You called her a whore. Alexei's words were precise, each one landing like a physical blow. You implied she's here for services beyond filing paperwork. That's what you said. Own it. The silence was suffocating. Victor had moved, I realized, positioning himself between us and the other men, his hand inside his jacket, ready. It was a joke, Orlov started. Apologize. Alexei cut him off. To her. Now. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? Something terrible lived in Alexei's eyes now, something that made my stomach clench with fear. Not fear of him, but fear of what he might do. You have 5 seconds to apologize to Sarah, or I walk out of here and every deal we have dies with this conversation. 4 seconds of silence. 3, 2. I apologize, Miss Mitchell. Orlov's voice was strained, humiliated. My comment was inappropriate. We're done here. Alexei's hand found mine, pulling me from the room. Dmitri, find better associates. This one's lifespan is looking shorter every day. We walked out into the night, Victor trailing behind us. I couldn't breathe properly, couldn't process what had just happened. Alexei had threatened business deals, possibly his entire relationship with these men, over an insult directed at me. The SUV was waiting. Victor opened the door, and Alexei guided me inside before sliding in beside me. The door closed, sealing us in leather-scented darkness. I'm sorry. The words burst out of me. I didn't mean to cause problems. You caused nothing. His voice was still edged with violence. That was about respect, about making sure everyone understands that you're not available for their commentary or their assumptions. His hand found my chin, tilting my face toward his. You're mine to protect, Sarah, mine to defend. And I will burn down anyone who forgets that. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me, should have sent me running back to my safe, miserable life where I was invisible and untouchable because I didn't matter enough to touch. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, drawn to the danger like a moth to flame. Why? I whispered. Why does it matter so much? Because I said it does. His thumb traced my lower lip, his eyes luminous in the darkness. Because you're the first real thing I've had in years, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take that away. The kiss happened so fast I had no time to prepare. His mouth covered mine, demanding and possessive, stealing the breath from my lungs. His hand tangled in my hair, holding me in place while he took what he wanted. His kiss speaking of ownership and hunger, and barely leashed violence. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered that this was my employer, that I was here because I needed money, that none of this was real. But my body didn't care about should. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and I kissed him back with all the desperation and fear and strange twisted gratitude that had been building since he'd found me crying in that hallway. He groaned against my mouth, the sound raw and hungry, and deepened the kiss until I was drowning in him, his taste, his scent, the solid reality of his body against mine. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes searched mine, looking for something I couldn't name. This changes things, he said quietly. I know. My voice was barely a whisper. I won't apologize for wanting you. I'm not asking you to. His smile was sharp and satisfied. Good. Because I'm a possessive bastard, Sarah, and now that I've had a taste, I'm not letting go. The drive back to the hotel passed in charged silence, his hand never leaving mine. When we arrived, he walked me to my apartment door, Victor discreetly remaining by the elevator. Get some rest, Alexei said, though his eyes promised anything but rest. Tomorrow we start establishing new boundaries with certain business associates who need to learn their place. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. His knuckles brushed my cheek, gentle despite the violence simmering underneath. Remind them why they fear me. He kissed me again, softer this time, but no less claiming, before stepping back. Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone except Victor or me. Understood? Yes. Good girl. The words sent heat pooling low in my stomach. Sleep well, Sarah. You're going to need your strength. He left before I could ask what that meant. I locked the door as instructed, my fingers trembling, and leaned against it. Everything had changed. I'd walked into that restaurant as an employee, a prop in his power games. I'd left as something else entirely. Something claimed, something wanted, something dangerous. I touched my lips, still feeling the pressure of his kiss, and wondered what I'd become. 3 weeks passed in a blur of impossible luxury and creeping unease. Alexei had been true to his word. Mama's treatment continued without interruption, the doctors reporting steady improvement. I visited her daily, watched color return to her cheeks, heard strength rebuild in her voice. She'd be released soon, they said, home to recover fully, to live instead of merely survive. But nothing came without a price. Alexei's possessiveness had intensified after that dinner. He wanted me constantly nearby, in his penthouse while he worked, accompanying him to meetings where I sat silent and observant, present at dinners where dangerous men spoke in coded language about things I pretended not to understand. His touches grew more frequent, more intimate, a hand at my waist, fingers trailing down my spine, lips brushing my temple in gestures that blurred every professional line. And I let him. God help me, I let him, because some treacherous part of me craved his attention like oxygen. "You're thinking too loud," his voice pulled me from my thoughts. We were in his penthouse, late afternoon sun painting everything amber. He sat at his desk, reviewing documents, while I occupied the chair across from him, my usual position during his business hours. "Sorry." I shifted, trying to focus on the book I'd been attempting to read for the past hour. "What's bothering you?" He set down his pen, giving me his full attention. That was one of the things that unsettled me most. When Alexei focused on you, it was absolute, total. Like you were the only thing in his universe that mattered. "Nothing. Just tired." "Liar." He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace. "You've been distracted all week. Tell me why." I closed my book, meeting his eyes. "It's been 3 weeks. When does this arrangement end?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or displeasure. "End? Why would it end when it's working perfectly?" "Because you said this wasn't forever. You said," I said I couldn't promise forever. He crouched in front of me, his hands settling on the chair's arms, caging me in. "That's different from wanting it to end. Do you want it to end, Sarah? Did I?" The question was more complicated than it should have been. This life, the safety, the luxury, the way he looked at me like I mattered. It was intoxicating. But it wasn't real. It was a fantasy built on his money and my desperation, and fantasies always ended badly. "I want to know what this is," I said quietly. "What I am to you. Employee? Companion? Something else?" His thumb traced my jawline, his touch impossibly gentle for someone capable of such violence. "You're mine. That's what you are. That's all that matters. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." His eyes searched mine, and for a moment I saw something raw beneath the carefully controlled surface. "I don't do relationships, Sarah. I don't do love or romance or any of the pretty lies people tell themselves. What I do is possession, obsession. I find something I want, and I keep it until what?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Until you get bored? Until something shinier comes along? Until they betray me." His voice went cold. "That's the only thing that ends this. Disloyalty. Everything else I can forgive. But betrayal?" His fingers tightened on my jaw, just shy of painful. "That, I destroy." A knock interrupted us. Victor, his expression urgent. "Sir, we have a situation." Alexei's entire demeanor shifted, the tenderness evaporating like morning mist. "What kind of situation?" "Dmitry Koslov. He's downstairs demanding to see you. Says it's about the missing shipment." Something dangerous flickered in Alexei's eyes. "How many men?" "4 that we can see, possibly more in vehicles. Armed?" "Undoubtedly." Alexei stood, his hand moving to his waist where I knew he kept a gun tucked beneath his jacket. I'd seen it before. Sleek, black, deadly. "Take Sarah to the secure room. Lock her in. Don't open the door for anyone except me." "Wait." I grabbed his arm. "What's happening? What's going on?" "Business." He cupped my face, his kiss hard and possessive. "Stay with Victor. Do exactly what he says. I'll come for you when it's safe. Alexei." "Now, Victor." His voice was steel. Victor's hand closed around my arm, gentle but implacable. "Come, Miss Mitchell." I let him lead me down a hallway I'd never explored, through a hidden door that opened onto a small, windowless room. Panic room, I realized. Reinforced walls, emergency supplies, monitors showing various angles of the penthouse and building exterior. "Stay here." Victor's expression was grim. "No matter what you hear, stay here until Mr. Volkov comes for you." "Victor, what's happening? Who's Dmitry really?" "Someone who's been stealing from Mr. Volkov. Someone who made a mistake thinking he could get away with it." Victor's hand rested on his weapon. "And someone who's about to learn why people fear Alexei Volkov." The door sealed shut, locks engaging with heavy clicks. I was alone, staring at monitors that showed me pieces of a story I suddenly, desperately needed to understand. On screen, I watched Dmitry Koslov enter the penthouse with 3 men, all armed, all radiating violence. Watched Alexei greet them with perfect calm, pouring drinks like this was a social visit. Watched the conversation unfold in silent pantomime, tension ratcheting higher with each passing second. Then Dmitry said something that made Alexei's expression go cold as winter, set down his glass with deliberate care, and smiled, the kind of smile that promised death. What happened next was brutal and swift. Alexei moved like violence incarnate, his gun appearing in his hand with practiced ease. Dmitry's men reached for their weapons, but Alexei's security, men I'd seen but never registered, emerged from positions throughout the penthouse. The fight was over before it truly began. Dmitry's men disarmed and subdued within seconds. Only Dmitry remained standing, frozen, staring down the barrel of Alexei's gun. I couldn't hear what was said, but I watched Dmitry's face cycle through fear, rage, desperation. Watched him plead, argue, finally slump in defeat. Watched Alexei make a phone call, his expression carved from ice. 20 minutes later, men I didn't recognize arrived, efficient, professional, removing Dmitry and his crew like they were furniture being relocated, cleaning the penthouse of any evidence that violence had occurred, erasing the incident like it had never happened. This was Alexei's world. This was who he really was beneath the expensive suits and gentle touches. A man who eliminated problems with ruthless efficiency, who commanded an empire built on violence and fear. And I was in the middle of it, trapped in a gilded cage of my own making. The door opened. Alexei stood there, not a hair out of place, though I could see the adrenaline still burning in his eyes. "It's over." "What did you do?" My voice came out hoarse. "What did you do to him?" What needed to be done? He entered the room, and I instinctively backed up. He noticed, his expression darkening. "You're afraid of me now. I watched you." I gestured at the monitors. "I saw. You saw me protect what's mine." He moved closer, relentless. "Dmitry has been stealing from me for months, lying to my face while he bled my operations dry. Did you expect me to let that continue? To show mercy to someone who showed me none? I didn't know what I'd expected. I knew you were dangerous. Everyone told me. But seeing it is different from knowing it." He caught my arms, holding me in place when I would have retreated further. "This is who I am, Sarah. This is what you agreed to when you took my offer. You don't get to cherry-pick the parts you like and ignore the rest. I didn't agree to be involved in whatever just happened. You became involved the moment you entered my world." His grip tightened. "You think you can live in my space, take my money, accept my protection, and remain separate from what I do? That's not how this works." "Then how does it work?" I demanded, anger finally overriding fear. "You tell me, Alexei, because I'm trying to understand. You saved me, yes. You gave me everything I needed, yes. But what's the price? What am I really paying for all this?" "Your loyalty." His eyes blazed with intensity. "Your presence, your honesty in a world of lies. That's all I've ever asked for." "That's not all." The words burst out. "You kiss me, you touch me, you look at me like you want to consume me whole. You tell everyone I'm yours, but you won't say what that means. You want my loyalty, but you won't give me truth. That's not fair, Alexei. That's not..." He kissed me, cutting off the flow of words, kissed me like he was drowning and I was air, his hands fisting in my hair, his body pressing mine against the wall. The kiss was desperate, almost violent, tasting of possession and need, and something that felt dangerously close to panic. When he pulled back, we were both shaking. "You want truth?" His voice was ragged. "Here's truth. I'm obsessed with you. From the moment I saw you crying in that hallway, something in me recognized something in you. You were broken in all the ways I understand, desperate in ways I remember being once. And when you looked at me, not with fear or calculation, but with simple, honest need, I was lost." His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm on my lips. "I don't know how to do this gently, Sarah. I don't know how to want something without consuming it. I'm possessive and jealous, and I will destroy anyone who tries to take you from me. That's the truth. That's what you're dealing with. And what am I to you? I whispered. Really? Everything. The word was raw, honest in a way that made my heart stutter. You're everything I shouldn't want, and the only thing I can't give up. You're the conscience I lost years ago, and the future I didn't know I wanted. You're mine, Sarah, in every way that matters. I'm not a possession. No. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. You're so much more than that. You're the only person in my world who sees me, really sees me, and doesn't run. The only one whose presence doesn't come with expectations or agendas. You're real in a way nothing else is. I'm scared, I admitted. Of you, of this, of what I'm becoming. Good. His smile was sharp and sad. Fear keeps you smart, keeps you cautious, but don't let it keep you from this. He kissed me again, softer now. From us. There is no us. You said you don't do relationships. I don't. His eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. But I'll try. For you. I'll try to be something other than the monster everyone thinks I am. The promise hung between us, fragile and impossible. He was offering me something, not forever maybe, but a chance. A choice to step fully into his world, knowing what it meant, knowing who he was. The smart choice would be to walk away, to take what he'd given me, Mama's health, enough savings to start over, and disappear before I got in any deeper. But smart choices had never been my specialty. Okay, I whispered. Okay. His kiss was different this time, tender, almost reverent. I won't let anything happen to you. You understand that? You're under my protection, my obsession. Anyone who threatens you will answer to me. Even you? I asked. If you're the threat? Especially me. His smile was crooked, almost boyish. Though I'd appreciate it if you'd at least try to keep me honest. I can do that. Good. He pulled me close, wrapping me in his arms, because I have a feeling you're the only one who can. 6 months later, I stood in Mama's new apartment, paid for by Alexei, furnished to her tastes, in a safe neighborhood with good hospitals nearby. She'd recovered fully. The illness that had nearly killed her now just a bad memory. She'd started painting again, her canvases bright with colors I'd forgotten she loved. You look happy, she said, studying me over tea. Different. Stronger, I am. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Living in Alexei's world had changed me. I'd learned to navigate dangerous conversations, to read the undercurrents in business meetings, to understand the complex web of loyalties and betrayals that defined his empire. I'd learned that violence was sometimes necessary, that mercy was a luxury, that survival meant making hard choices. But I'd also learned that monsters could be tender, that men built from violence could still crave softness, that obsession could look uncomfortably like love if you squinted hard enough. Alexei was still possessive, still jealous, still capable of brutal efficiency when crossed. But he'd kept his word. He'd tried. Tried to explain instead of command, to ask instead of take, to build something with me instead of simply claiming me. It wasn't perfect. We fought. Screaming matches that sometimes ended with thrown objects and always ended with desperate reconciliation. He pushed too hard. I pushed back. He wanted complete control. I refused to give it. We were fire and gasoline, passion and violence, constantly threatening to consume each other. But underneath the chaos was something real. Something worth fighting for. Does he treat you well? Mama asked, reading my thoughts in that uncanny way mothers had. Yes. I met her eyes. He's complicated, dangerous, but he's good to me. Protective, maybe too protective sometimes, but you love him. She said it gently, without judgment. Did I? The question had haunted me for months. What Alexei and I had didn't look like the love in movies or books. It was messier, darker, built on need as much as want. But when I imagined my life without him, without his intensity, his possessiveness, his absolute certainty that I belonged to him. Everything felt colorless. Yeah, I admitted finally. I think I do. Then that's all that matters. Mama reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You saved my life, baby. Let him save yours. That evening, I returned to find Alexei in the penthouse, staring out at the city. He turned when I entered, his expression softening in that way it only did for me. How's your mother? Good. Happy. I moved to stand beside him. She asked about you. What did you tell her? That you're complicated. I leaned against his side, feeling his arm wrap around me automatically. Dangerous, possessive, occasionally insufferable. Sounds accurate. His lips brushed my temple. You left out devastatingly handsome. That's implied. His laugh was low and warm. We stood like that for a while, watching the city lights flicker on one by one, neither of us needing to fill the silence with words. I have something for you, he said finally, pulling a small box from his pocket. Not a ring. I would have panicked if it had been a ring. Instead, a delicate bracelet of platinum and diamonds, beautiful and clearly expensive. Alexei, before you argue, it's not a gift. He fastened it around my wrist with careful fingers. It's a tracker. GPS embedded in the clasp. I'll always know where you are. I should have been angry, should have railed against this blatant invasion of privacy, but I understood what he was really saying. I can't lose you. I need to know you're safe. You're insane, I said, but there was no heat in it. About you? Absolutely. He turned me to face him, his eyes searching mine. I know I'm not easy to love, Sarah. I know what I am, what I've done, but you make me want to be better, to try. I know. I cupped his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw. And you are. Trying, I mean. It's enough. Is it? His vulnerability was showing again, that rare glimpse beneath the armor. Because I need you to understand. I'm never letting you go. This thing between us, whatever it is, it's permanent. You're stuck with me. Promises, promises, but my heart was racing, my eyes burning with emotion I didn't want to name. I mean it. His intensity was back, that laser focus that made me feel like the center of the universe. I'm possessive, obsessed. I will be insufferable and controlling and probably drive you crazy. But I will also protect you with everything I have. Love you in the only way I know how. Absolutely, completely, without reservation. That sounds exhausting. It will be. His smile was sharp and true, but you're strong enough to handle it. Strong enough to handle me. He was right. Somewhere in the past 6 months, I'd stopped being the broken girl crying in a hallway. I'd become someone who could stand in the center of chaos and not flinch. Someone who could love a dangerous man and not lose herself. Okay? I whispered. The same word that had started everything. Okay. This time when he kissed me, it felt like a vow. A promise of messy, complicated, sometimes violent love between two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and refused to let go. My life wasn't perfect. Alexei's world was dangerous. His obsession consuming. His need for control sometimes suffocating. But it was mine. This strange, beautiful, terrifying life we'd built together, and I wouldn't change it for anything. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. Inside, wrapped in the arms of a man who'd saved me and claimed me and loved me in all the wrong ways that felt absolutely right, I was finally